The morning my whole life collapsed started like every other Tuesday. I was at my desk at Mercer & Voss Financial, 9 years deep, senior compliance analyst, the guy they called when something smelled wrong in the numbers. Coffee in my hand, laptop open, 7:42 a.m. Then my phone lit up. HR Director, Sandra Whitaker. "Lewis," she said, and her voice had that tight, careful sound people use right before they lower a guillotine. "We need you in the conference room. Now. Security is already there." I remember thinking, someone else is getting let go. I'll be a witness. But when I walked through those glass doors, it was my name on the whiteboard. My transaction logs on the projector screen. My face reflecting back at me in the polished conference table. Lewis Tillman. The company attorney didn't even look up. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated pending a federal investigation into unauthorized manipulation of client fund allocations." The air left my body. I didn't. My voice cracked like I was 16 again. I flagged those discrepancies. I reported them to Davenport 3 weeks ago. I have the email. Sandra Whitaker wouldn't look at me. Derek Mays, my supposed ally in risk assessment, sat across the table studying his notepad like it contained the meaning of life. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended me. They walked me out through the main floor. 30 co-workers watched me hand over my badge, my laptop, my parking pass. Carl, the security guard who used to save me donuts on Fridays, couldn't meet my eyes. By noon, my name was on the financial newswire. By 1 p.m., my phone was exploding. Not with support. With something far worse. My family had seen the headlines. I drove to my mother's house in Decatur because I didn't know where else to go. My hands shook the entire 20-minute drive. The radio kept mentioning the Mercer & Voss internal fraud case and I kept slapping it off like it burned. Mama's house is a tan brick split level with wind chimes Daddy hung before he passed. I've stood on that porch through breakups, through grief, through every storm life sent. It always felt safe. Not today. My mother, Evelyn Tillman, opened the door before I could knock. Arms crossed. Reading glasses pushed up on her head. A look I hadn't seen since I was 16 and crashed Uncle Ray's Bic. "I don't want reporters following you here," she said. "Mama, I didn't do anything." My voice broke on the last word. "They're setting me up. I'm the one who found the fraud and reported it." She stepped back. Not to let me in. To create distance. "Lewis, your cousin Ronnie works downtown. He saw your name on CNN." "I know, Mama. Let me explain. Your Aunt Celestine called me 6 times. She pressed her fingers to her temple. 6 times, Lewis." Something cold moved through my chest. I wasn't talking to my mother right now. I was talking to a woman managing her social reputation. "I need help," I said quietly. "I need a lawyer and I need someone in my corner." She looked at me for a long, terrible moment. "Maybe you should stay somewhere else until this blows over. I can't have this energy in my house right now." She closed the door. Softly. Didn't slam it. Soft is somehow so much worse. I stood on that porch, Daddy's wind chime singing behind me, and I felt something shift permanently in my chest. Like a bone that would never set right again. I stayed 3 nights in a motel 6 off I-20. The sheets smelled like bleach. The heater clicked like a metronome counting down to something terrible. I applied for unemployment. I called 5 lawyers. 3 didn't call back. On night 3, my phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Nellie, 23 years old, sweet, always sending me memes at midnight. But this wasn't a meme. "Louise. I'm sorry. I think you need to see this. I didn't know they were doing this." She sent a screenshot. A group chat. Named, Family Business, Private. I wasn't in it. Participants. Mama. My older brother Jorge. Aunt Celestine. Uncle Earl. My sister-in-law Pamela. The timestamps went back 4 months. For months before I lost my job. I scrolled. My thumb was trembling. Jorge, for months ago, Louis needs to sign over his portion of Grandma Ida's estate before this situation gets complicated. Mama, he won't do it willingly. You know how stubborn he is. Aunt Celestine, Earl talked to a property attorney. If Louis faces any legal troubles, we can petition to have him removed from the deed. Pamela, perfect timing then. Jorge's accountant friend already talked to someone at his company. I read that last line 3 times. Then I read it again. Jorge's accountant friend already talked to someone at his company. I wasn't fired because I reported fraud. I was set up so my family could steal my inheritance. My brother, my mother, my aunt, my uncle. They hadn't just abandoned me after the scandal. They had engineered the scandal. The motel room spun. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at that screen, and I understood, with total, devastating clarity, that I was completely alone. Let me tell you about Jorge Tillman, because you need to understand who he is before you understand what he did. Jorge is 41. 6'2", silver at his temples, always dressed sharp. He was the first in our family to wear a suit to work. He took me to get my first haircut. He taught me to drive in the parking lot of Greater Calvary Baptist on a Sunday afternoon, laughing every time I braked too hard. For 34 years, I thought my brother loved me. He runs a mid-size property development firm out of Buckhead. Drives a G-Wagon. Vacations in Cancun twice a year. Sends his kids to private school. What I didn't know, what I was never supposed to know, was that Jorge had been hemorrhaging money. Bad deals. Silent investors pulling out. He was months from losing everything. And Grandma Ida's property in Cascade Heights, the house she left equally to Jorge and me, was sitting on land worth $1.2 million to a developer who'd been circling it for 2 years. He just needed my name off the deed. I called him the morning after seeing the screenshot. I didn't yell. I was too far past yelling. I had moved somewhere cold and clear where everything slowed down. Jorge. My voice was flat. Who did Pamela talk to at my company? 4 seconds of silence. I counted them. I don't know what you're talking about. His voice was slick. Rehearsed. He'd been waiting for this call. I have the group chat. Jorge. All of it. 4 months back. A longer silence. That's family business, Louis. Family handles family business internally. You destroyed my career, I said. You destroyed my name. That's not family business. That's a felony. He hung up. And just like that, 34 years of brotherhood, gone. Pamela Tillman, née Carter, married my brother 14 years ago. Small backyard wedding in College Park. I was the best man. I gave a speech that made her cry happy tears. I genuinely believed she was the best thing that ever walked into our family. She called me 2 days after I confronted Jorge. I almost didn't answer. Luis. Her voice was shredded. I need you to know I didn't think it would go this far. What exactly did you think would happen, Pamela? A long pause. Then, barely a whisper. Mateo Davenport. My blood went ice cold. Mateo Davenport. My direct supervisor. The man I hand-delivered my fraud report to. The man who smiled and said, "Good work, Louis. I'll take it from here." The man who took my report and used it to bury me. Jorge met Davenport at a real estate networking event 8 months ago, Pamela continued. Davenport was already under SEC investigation. He needed someone to pin the fraud on. Jorge said you'd be perfect. You were already digging through the accounts anyway. I had to set my phone on the nightstand. Put it on speaker. My hands couldn't hold anything. Pamela. One breath. Did my mother know Davenport was involved? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. She knew someone at the company was helping. She didn't ask questions. My mother knew her son was being fed to wolves. And she didn't ask questions. I want you to sit with that for a second. Because I had to sit with it for weeks. Her name was Yvette Garrison Cross, and she was not what I expected. I found her through a paralegal at a law firm that finally called me back. The paralegal whispered before hanging up, "Don't take our case. But call Yvette. She eats situations like yours for breakfast." Yvette's office was on the 6th floor of a building in Midtown with a view of Peachtree Street. Natural hair, reading glasses on a beaded chain, a desk stacked with organized chaos. When I walked in looking like I hadn't slept in a week, because I hadn't, she didn't offer me pity. She offered me water and a legal pad. "Talk," she said. "Don't edit. I need everything." I talked for 93 minutes. When I got to Nellie's screenshot, she stopped writing. "Let me see that." She read it once. Then again. She took her glasses off. "Pamela specifically names an accountant friend of Jorge's talking to someone at your company. And your supervisor's name is Davenport. Mateo Davenport. Mateo Davenport is currently under active SEC investigation for client fund misappropriation." She held up one finger. "Your internal fraud report. Do you still have a copy?" I emailed it to Davenport and blind copied my personal email. Force of habit. She smiled then. First time since I'd walked in. It was the kind of smile that made me feel like somewhere, for the first time in weeks, the scales were shifting. "Lewis," she said, leaning forward, "you didn't just save yourself a paper trail. You may have just handed the SEC their star witness. Davenport didn't frame you because he feared you. He framed you because your brother gifted you to him as the perfect scapegoat. And that," she tapped the legal pad, "makes this a conspiracy. Multiple parties. Federal exposure." For the first time since Sandra Whitaker's phone call, I exhaled. I hadn't planned to contact Uncle Earl. He'd always been background noise in our family, showed up to cookouts, laughed too loud, agreed with whoever had the most money in the room. After seeing his name in that group chat, I'd mentally filed him under coward and moved on. But Earl called me. It was a Sunday. I was in Yvette's office reviewing documents when my phone lit up with his number. I almost sent it to voicemail. Something made me answer. "Luis." His voice had that gravel that comes from 40 years of Newports. "I'm calling because Celestine doesn't know I'm calling." "Okay," I said carefully. "This thing went sideways, son. Way sideways. I want you to know, I didn't know Davenport was going to make it federal. I thought Jorge was just going to pressure you to sign the deed. That's all I thought it was." "That's still fraud, Uncle Earl." "I know." A pause. Ragged breathing. "I need you to know I didn't want your career gone. Jorge said you'd never agree to sell Grandma Ida's property and the developer had a deadline and my inheritance was just collateral damage." My voice was sharp and controlled. Yvette was watching me, nodding slightly. "Keep him talking." "I want to make this right," Earl said. "I don't know how but I want to. I need you to write down everything you know. Every conversation. Every date. Every name mentioned." Silence. "Earl." I kept my voice level. "Either you're a witness or you're a defendant. You get to choose which one right now." 3 seconds passed. Then, "All right, Lewis. All right." That phone call cracked the whole thing open. Earl didn't just give me a statement. He gave Yvette a name we hadn't had yet, the developer who had been pressuring Jorge for months. His name was Gordon Ashby. And Gordon Ashby had his own attorney. 3 weeks after she closed her front door in my face, my mother showed up at the extended stay hotel where I'd moved after the Motel 6. I don't know how she got the address. I didn't ask. She was standing outside my door when I came back from a meeting with Yvette. Smaller than I remembered her. She'd lost weight. She was holding her purse with both hands in front of her like a shield. "Luis." Her voice was soft. Careful. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who raised me. Who stayed up nights when I had pneumonia at age 7. Who pressed my suit before my first job interview. Who, for months ago, sat in a group chat and helped plan my destruction. "What do you want, Mama?" She flinched. I came to explain. "Okay." I unlocked my door and left it open. I didn't invite her in. She stepped inside anyway. She sat on the edge of the chair by the window. I stood. Deliberately. Jorge told me it was just about the property, she said. He said you were being selfish holding onto your share when the family needed the money. He said you'd never agree to sell. He was right. I wouldn't have agreed to sell Grandma Ida's house. That's legal, Mama. That's my right. I know that now. Did you know it then? Her chin trembled. Luis, Jorge is your brother. Jorge conspired with a federal fraud suspect to end my career. I said it slowly, every word deliberate. And you helped him. And now his plan is falling apart, and that's why you're here. She started crying. Real tears. I believed they were real. But real tears don't erase real choices. I can't help you right now, I told her. I'm trying to survive what your choices did to me. When I'm on the other side of this, we'll talk. I opened the door. She left. Yvette moved fast. She contacted the Sex Atlanta field office and presented everything. My original fraud report with the timestamp, the blind copied email proving I submitted it to Davenport weeks before my termination, Pamela's verbal testimony, and Earl's written statement naming Gordon Ashby and connecting Jorge's development deal to Davenport's scheme. The SEC had been building a case against Davenport for 11 months. They had the fraud. What they hadn't had was proof of who inside the company was helping him cover it up. My report gave them that. My firing gave them motive. And Jorge Tillman's backroom deal gave them conspiracy. I wasn't in the room when federal investigators showed up at Mercer and Voss. But Yvette had a contact there and called me the second it happened. They walked Davenport out at 2:17 p.m., she said. Badge, laptop, exactly like they did to you. Except he's got handcuffs and 3 agents. I sat in my car in a parking deck on Piedmont and let out a sound I can't even describe. Not celebration. Not relief. Something rawer than either. Something closer to grief, because none of this had to happen. My career didn't have to be collateral damage in my own brother's desperation. 2 days later, Mercer and Voss's new interim CEO called Yvette directly. They were reopening my case. They were reviewing the termination. They were very interested in my full cooperation with the federal investigation. Yvette told them I'd cooperate. For a price. Back pay. Full reinstatement offer. A written public statement clearing my name. And if they resist? I asked her. She smiled. They won't. My brother called me on a Thursday evening. I was eating takeout jerk chicken in my hotel room, watching nothing on television, trying to learn how to exist in the quiet. I looked at his name on my screen for 5 full rings. I answered. Luis. His voice was unrecognizable. All that smooth, polished buckhead confidence, gone. I need you to tell the SEC that Earl was lying. That Pamela misunderstood. You can say it was all Davenport. I set down my fork. Jorge. I've got kids, Luis. I've got Jalen and Cara, they're 14 and 11, they don't deserve. Stop. My voice was quiet. Controlled. Don't use your children right now. Don't you dare. I'm begging you. And he was. I could hear it. Brother to brother. Something moved through me. Not sympathy. Something colder and more honest. The recognition that he was exactly the same man he'd always been. Charismatic when he needed something. Generous when it cost him nothing. And when the walls closed in, he'd sacrifice anyone. He'd already sacrificed me. Here's what I know, Jorge, I said. I know that when I needed a brother, you handed me to a federal fraud suspect like I was a bargaining chip. I know that when I showed up to Mama's door scared and broken, your plan was already in motion. I know what you did. The SEC knows what you did. And I will not lie to protect you. A long, hollow silence. So that's it, he said. Family means nothing. Family meant everything, I said. You just didn't agree. I hung up. And I didn't feel guilty. That's the part one needs you to understand. I didn't feel guilty at all. Through all of this, Nellie was the one who checked in. Not with advice or opinions. Just texts. You eat today. Thinking about you. Proud of you. She was the one who sent me the screenshot that cracked everything open. A 23-year-old who sat at a family cookout in October, saw a notification pop up on her aunt's phone, and had the courage to screenshot and forward it to me, even knowing what it would cost her within the family. I met her for coffee at a spot on Memorial Drive about a month after everything started unraveling publicly. She wrapped both hands around her mug and said, "They've been telling people you manipulated me into sending it. That you had access to Celestine's phone somehow." "Of course they are," I said. "Mama Evelyn called my mom and said I was confused." She looked at me directly. "I'm not confused, Lewis. I know what I saw." "I know you do, Brie." She stirred her coffee. "Can I tell you something without you getting mad?" "Yeah." "I always knew something was off with how they talked about you in private. Like you were the family problem they were managing. Not a person." She paused. "You worked so hard to belong to people who were already deciding you didn't." That hit me somewhere I wasn't prepared for. I had to look out the window for a second. She was right. And I'd known it on some level for years, how Jorge would subtly undercut my accomplishments at dinner, how Mama always seemed more proud of his success than mine, how Aunt Celestine watched me like I was a liability. I'd worked twice as hard trying to earn what should have just been given. "Thank you," I told Nellie, "for being real. You're the only one in this family who is," she said. For months after Mateo Davenport was walked out of Mercer and Voss in handcuffs, Yvette sat across from me in her office and slid a folder across the desk. "Read it," she said. "The settlement agreement from Mercer and Voss. 14 months of back pay. A formal written apology. A public statement to the press acknowledging that my termination was wrongful and based on fabricated evidence supplied by a now criminally charged supervisor. They also offered reinstatement." I read that line 3 times. "What do you want to do?" Yvette asked. I thought about it. The glass doors. The main floor. Carl the security guard who couldn't look at me. 30 people who watched me hand over my badge like a criminal. "I'll take the settlement," I said. "But not the reinstatement. I'm not going back." Yvette nodded like she'd expected exactly that. Smart. On the criminal side, Davenport pleaded guilty to 2 counts of securities fraud and 1 count of obstruction. He was looking at federal prison time. Gordon Ashby, the developer, was cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced charge. And Jorge, my brother Jorge, was named as a co-conspirator in the federal filing. His attorney was negotiating a plea. The G-Wagon was gone. I heard through Nellie that Pamela had taken the kids to her mother's house in College Park. And Grandma Ida's property in Cascade Heights? Still in both our names. A court order froze any transactions pending the criminal case resolution. He never got it. After everything, he never got it. I want to be honest with you about where I am, because I'm not going to give you a neat bow. I'm not healed. I'm not the same man who drove to his mother's house that Tuesday afternoon expecting to be caught. But I'm clearer than I've ever been. And sometimes clarity is worth more than peace. I got a consulting position with a smaller firm, better culture, better hours, people who actually checked on me when the news broke. Yvette's invoice is paid. My savings are rebuilding. I found an apartment in East Atlanta with good light and no wind chimes, because I needed a home that didn't carry ghosts. Mama and I have spoken twice since the hotel. Both times were careful, fragile conversations. She has not apologized in the way I needed. I'm not sure she's capable of it yet. Maybe ever. I love her and I've had to accept that loving someone and trusting them are 2 completely different things. Jorge awaits sentencing. I don't think about him as much as I expected to. What I do think about is how I spent decades performing for people who saw me as an asset to be managed, not a person to be loved. I think about Grandma Ida, who left us that house equally because she believed in fairness, because she believed in us. I keep her picture on my desk. I think about Nellie, who chose truth over comfort when it cost her something. That kind of courage is rare. I don't take it for granted. Here's what I know now. The people who plan your downfall in private cannot stand in your corner in public. And the moment someone shows you who they are, believe them, even when believing them breaks your heart in ways you didn't know were possible. I'm still here. They counted me out. They engineered my fall. And I am still here.